The Joe Rogan Experience.
I remember I tested for a reality show on Food Network, and they had me on set for about an hour, and they were like, yeah, this is not. I said like 3 things into the camera, and they go, none of this this is not going to work.
What did you say?
Well, they were just basically like, it was called hot spots, and they're like, tell us what you think a hot spot is. What's a real cool hot spot? And I was just like, a hot spot is when I try to get into it, the maitre d' tells me to kill myself. And then they go, okay, well, let's do the joke again, but let's not say kill yourself. I'm like, well, that's the joke, right? So they're like, just maybe say something like, when I try to get in, they say no. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not funny. So then we just tried to work around it a bunch of different ways, and I would just keep saying things, and you could tell they were just getting frustrated. Networks like Food Network love the idea of comedians. They're like, we love the idea of having a comedian come in to spice it up. And then when they get a real comedian, they're like, we don't want that.
Well,
Not
they want a comedian
am.
with like 3 tracks.
Yeah.
They want like a real down the middle,
goofy,
like not a lot of lane changing.
Because I was making fun of, like, we had all the archetypes of the Food Network people. Like, we had the fat Southern woman that was supposed to be Paula Dean, and she came in. She's like, "Have you ever had a redneck grilled cheese?" And I said, "This woman's going to explode on set." And because they said you can be playful with each other. So I said, this woman's going to explode on set. And they go, wait a minute, hold on. And I'm like, you said we could be playful. We had the Asian woman who was like, she just talked about wellness. She was like, I want to be whole, and I want to be one, and I want to be wellness. And then, so you had the Guy Fieri, like, there's a million chefs that think they're Bourdain. They think they're profound, but in reality, they're just making fucking grilled cheese, and they have tattoos. But other than that, so we had a bunch of those chefs who were like, I'm a hard partying. I've seen it all. I've seen it all. I've worked on the line. It's like, shut up. You've made gnocchi.
Bourdain with Kitchen Confidential, he changed what a chef is.
He changed what a chef is, but most chefs are not that. And the reality is like, you hear people now that travel around the country and they think that they're like, and I love Bourdain, a brilliant show, but sometimes Bourdain show was interesting because like he'd be sitting with a family in Turkey and they'd be like, well, we haven't seen our daughter in 2 days and we don't really know where she is, Revolution. And then it would be like, and then they would start talking about hummus. And I'd be like, what happened to your daughter? Like, what's going on? Like, why are we talking about figs right now? There's a revolution happening. This whole idea that like food, like I think Bourdain was a genius, but the people that have succeeded him haven't done it well.
Is anybody doing it that way where they're traveling around? The Gordon Ramsay, they were talking about him doing something, but the backlash was immediate and fierce.
Yeah.
Because people were thinking that he was going to try to replace Bourdain.
Right.
But if he stays in his wheelhouse as Hell's Kitchen and doing all those shows that he did before, everybody would have been fine with it. But they were like, hey, fuck you.
He's going to come, yeah.
Imagine doing No Reservations now, or what is the new show? What was it?
Parts Unknown?
Parts Unknown. Imagine it's like Parts Unknown with new host Tim Dillon.
No, it would not work. It would be fucked.
They would come get you.
Yeah, no, it'd be a problem. Yeah. And it's also like he was a really brilliant guy. Like most people that like they're like, oh, we're eating food and learning about the culture. It's like, you're really not. You're just having dinner.
He actually was.
He was. Because he was curious and interested. But most people it's just a lot of people are pretentious.
Yeah.
And they think that they're learning about the culture through food. We're learning about the culture through dining. And it's like, you're not really. You're eating in a resort. You're not going anywhere outside of the resort because you would get harpooned. So you're eating in a resort, and then there's a black SUV that takes you back to the airport.
It's bulletproof.
It's bulletproof.
You got armed guards flanking you on each side.
The one time that you didn't have that, I was on the Impractical Jokers cruise, which they have a cruise. They do a cruise, and they're great guys. And a bunch of comics came on to entertain people that were waiting to see them. People waiting to see them. But we would come on and go, hey, and they would think it was them, and they'd be like, okay, it's this guy. And they were fun audiences and everything. But then the cruise would dock, and you would go to this little town in Mexico that was like clearly didn't exist. It was just like, all these cruise lines had bought just a certain amount of beachfront and made it a town. Ooh. Yeah, and they do this. It was called Costa Maya. They literally do this. And, you would walk onto this beach, and then literally they would like drive you to the little tourist area, but you would just see people running around with bare feet, roosters. I mean, it was like you would drive through like literal and crazy poverty, and you felt horrible because you were just on a boat that had 30 chefs.
Right.
You were just on this disgusting boat with a 24-hour buffet where people are gorging themselves, and then you go to this island where like people's bones are protruding out of their body. So it's a weird thing when you mix those worlds of like food, travel, and education.